Okay, so in this session we want to talk to you about inventory management. The first thing I'm going to talk to you about is how to make a transaction entry. So say you count 10 cases and there's really only 9 and you need to adjust that. This is how you would do it. So there's a couple ways you can get there as usual. Up here through the toolbar and then down here through this module. I like to use the module, but whatever way works best for you. So under transactions, under inventory, transactions, transaction entry, this is where you click. And we have 2 document types. We have adjustment and we have a variance. Adjustment is going to be for your breakage and unsaleables, and variance is going to be for everything else. So in this instance, I'm going to start with a variance. I'm going to walk you through how to do that. So I hit the tab button. And it comes over, it gives you your number. This is just a number that stores in the system for an audit purposes. Next we have our date here. Over here we have our batch ID. So batch ID in this case is good to set up if you're trying to do a workflow and have someone approve this before it actually gets posted. You could actually add as many items as you want and adjust them accordingly throughout this whole transaction. So you don't have to set up a batch ID, but they might want you to. So in this case, I'm going to do that. And I'm just going to name it my initials and then the date. And we're going to skip over this default site ID. We don't want to fill that out at all. For some reason, there's a GP glitch that affects the distributions if you do that. So if you pass by that and go straight into the item number, once I tab off of that, it's going to ask me if I want to add the batch. It's going to send me into the batch entry. I don't need to do anything from here, so I'm just going to click Save. So now I'll skip down to the item number. And this is going to be my test item number. And I tab over. And next we have reason code. We have 2 reason codes, one reason code for variance, 2 reason codes for adjustment. So the only reason code we have for variance is variance. So I'm going to select that. And next, it defaults to your unit of measure as bottles that you want to adjust in or out. You can do cases, but I'm going to stick to bottles here. And to do case, you would just type case over the bottle section. So next, I'm going to type in my quantity. If you notice that you'll see over here under unit cost, it already knows the unit cost. So what this unit cost is, it's the last cost the item was received at. So if I were to add 5, it's going to pull that cost and it's going to affect that cost layer accordingly. I'll tab through, and next, this is actually where you want to put, if you can see, there's a double header up here, so there's 2 lines down here. So this site ID, this is actually where you want to put in what warehouse or what site that you're going to be using. It's always going to be warehouse 1, so you'll select that there. And just for demonstration, I'm just going to show you what happens when you take some out. Again, put in my variance.
And if you start to type that, it'll default in. You don't always have to use the lookup class. That's how Matt's doing it right here. But if you start to type, it'll drop down. You can just arrow down and select it too.
And then in this case, I'm going to take out 5, or let's take out 10, so it'll be an actual difference. Those are good. All right, so when I tab over here, it's going to take the cost out. So what that's going to do, it's going to take out 10 from that current cost layer that's open. So there is no cost that needs to be in there. And let me back up. I also meant to say that you can type over this if you'd like. Oh, I didn't type in warehouse 1. So if you need to adjust it back in at a different cost, you can type over this. You don't have to leave it at this cost.
What's included in the cost?
It's your cost layer, so your inventory costs.
Everything included?
Yeah.
And sales and use?
Nope.
No.
No tax. That'll be after.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to save this to my batch. And we'll get out of here and come back in here in just a second. So in order to post the batch, you want to go under Inventory, transactions, and then batches. And then search here under my batch ID to find my batch. You can go through and you can look at your batch contents if you'd like, just to, if someone is reviewing this. And to post my batch, I just click post.
Can you go a little faster? I'm not busy enough.
Can anyone add to your batch?
Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
it's
not
just
like
going
that,
to be
so
out there.
anyone can-
Yep,
Okay.
yep. All right, so then when you hit post, there's going to be these posting journals that we've probably have seen before. This one's a transaction posting journal, and it's just going to give you some details down at the bottom. It's going to show you which inventory account it hit and what the offset account was, and also give you your totals of cost and your totals of quantity in and out.
To tie back to the GL team where we talked about the item class setup and pulling to the item card, both of those accounts you'll notice are coming from the item card. They have the 01 segment
Yep.
because the inventory item is a spirit. So that inventory account and the variance account both set up and maintained at the item card.
Right.
Is this an inventory adjustment? we're
Yes.
doing?
This is, well, yeah, technically it's a variance, but yes. And here's another posting journal. You can choose to take these off if you'd like. And here's another one. And one more with your GL distributions. Okay, so that's a variance. Now we're going to go through and we're going to talk about an adjustment. And the type of adjustment I'm going to do is actually an unsaleable. So we'll just talk about that for a second. So when a customer returns an item, customer service is going to actually place that return, which is going to place the quantity back on hand. Then what? Did you say customer service was going to do this? Do these
Do the transfer.
transfers?
What transfers?
A transfer into the damage bucket?
Yes.
Okay. So then customer service will come in here under inventory, transactions, and then transfer entry. We'll select that. Again, it's set up the same way as the transaction entry is with the number for audit and then your date. And I'm going to skip down to default. This is actually where you want to put the default site ID in. I'm going to select warehouse 1 both times.
If you forget, what does it do? Tell you that you have to do it?
Yeah, it'll tell you all fields aren't filled out. Here's my number again. There is no reason code set up for transfer. I believe the only thing you're going to use transfer for is unsaleable. Again, it's going to be in your unit of measure. It's going to default to bottle. Then it's going to ask you your quantity. So if I had 20 bottles that came back that were unsaleable, I'm going to just put 20. And then come down here to your quantity type. So I'll click that button. And then the quantity type, we want to move, this is a from and then to. So we're going to move from on hand and to this damaged bucket. Once I click OK here, I'm done. I can go ahead and click post. And then it's going to give me these same journal entries, or excuse me, posting journals. Skip over those.
So this allows you to return something that has been damaged, and at the time they're posting their return, they're also going to do this transfer. That way you're not selling back out of that available quantity.
Correct.
Yeah, but where's this going to, a transfer to me is if we transfer goods to, back to the supplier or to another distributor
Right.
in the state.
That's sales
Right, so
That
that's
to me
sales
is
transfers.
transfer.
Right, so that's a sales transfer.
is an
This is
inventory.
inventory transfer, which is just moving it from available to damaged.
I get it, but under the term transfer, are they both going to be in the same field?
No,
No.
they don't do anything. The sales to transfers is a whole different area.
Will show
We've
up
done
in a whole
it
different area. than
different
this
area
transfer.
altogether. Yes, you're exactly right.
Okay. So next I'm going to show you what bucket it moves into. So we're going to go to the item card. I'll type in my item. And then we hit this go to button here under quantity and sites, we'll select our site ID, which is warehouse 1. And now you'll see that in this, we started with 40, and now you'll see in this damaged bucket, we now have 20. So I'll save this, we'll come back and look at this later. So then once you've been given the go to dispose of the item, now you'll need to move it out of the damaged bucket back into quantity on hand. So to do that, it's just another transfer. So we'll move those 20 back into on hand. Have to go back into the quantity type, and now you're moving it from the damaged bucket back into on hand.
But not available.
It's going to be available when they hit post, then immediately after they need to do a transaction, which I'm going to go over to move it out of on hand again.
Timing of that could be critical.
Correct.
Something, if an order grabs it in the meantime.
Absolutely.
So the idea would be you could, in theory, have the transfer screen open and key the transfer before you post it. You can have the inventory adjustment screen, which she's about to go over, open as well. And you're just post, and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
To minimize that
And
window.
that's obviously only if it's the last bit of inventory. You always could do
Sure.
it not in that order. You could
Yeah.
transfer before if it wasn't the last bit of inventory.
Okay, so then we go back into our transaction entry, and this time we're going to do an adjustment. As I said earlier, adjustments are for breakage and unsaleables, and variances for everything else. So we'll tab down, get the same number, date, and we're going to go skip down here, type in our item number, and then this time a reason code, you'll see that there's going to be 2, a breakage and an unsaleable. So we're going to select unsaleable. And we're going to move those bottles, so it's going to be a negative quantity, out of inventory. So do a negative 20 there, then we need to add our site ID. And then this time, instead of doing a batch, I'm just going to go ahead and post it from here. Again, we'll get these journals. But now if we go back into the item card, you'll see that it has moved out of the damage bucket and not back into on hand, so now we only have 20 when we started with 40. Any questions about that process before I continue?
Where to go?
Where to go?
I asked you first.
You took it took it out of quantity on hand, so you just removed it altogether.
Right, but we may have unsaleable that sits here for, who knows, Mike, a year?
A year or more.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why it sits in that damage
That's why
bucket
it's
for a
in
little
those
while.
rooms.
Yeah, so when you did the transfer, you moved it into a damaged bucket. So
Which
it
is
moves
right
it out
there
of
on his
quantity.
screen.
Yeah,
Show them where that was.
right here, this damaged bucket here. So it moves it out of quantity on hand.
So you keep
Yeah.
it there.
You keep it,
I
yes.
got rid of it, yeah.
Yeah,
He just did it really quick.
Now we have to bill a supplier for those damaged goods.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I typically do is I
Or
move
not,
it-
but sometimes,
Well,
most times we do.
Well, you
When I
could move
do-
it back to on hand
that's what I do.
and
I
then
do the
sell
billing.
it to them on a regular bill back
That's what I
invoice.
do.
Or
Yeah,
sales
regular order.
transaction.
It's a sales.
You
wouldn't
can
do
if you
that
wanna do
inventory
it.
adju- You wouldn't do that adjustment, you would do a
That's
sale
right, you would
transaction.
sell it
Yeah.
out that way.
That's what I
Right, but
do.
he needs a report of stock status
He
of
does,
unsaleable,
yeah.
so that he can call a supplier and say, listen, I've got here, I don't know if
Yeah.
you want to come down and look at it or not look at it, we need to destroy it. for-
Yep.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll give us credit, so hopefully you can print a report off of this.
You can. All of his stock status reports have a bucket both for on hand and damaged and returned and used. You don't use those other ones, but you can run that. You can also do a smart list. If you're not sick of us hearing that already, there's a smart list for that, and you go into your inventory. It'll show you every single bucket for that each item. It's the item with quantities, and it'll show all buckets, and you can sort and just then see those. Where if you run your inventory trial balance, I don't think one of the filter options just on the canned reports is show me only things with, damaged bucket greater than 0, but on Smart List you can. So that would be the only advantage to the Smart List.
Can you sort it by supplier?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, so the next screen I want to show you is this item stock inquiry screen. So this is a good place to go if you want to see the kind of the history of what your item has been doing. So under inquiry, inventory, and item, oh, excuse me, I went the wrong one. So inquiry, inventory, item stock. I'm going to type in my number here. And now we'll see all the things that have been done. So if you go into this right now, you're just going to have, on most items, there's going to be one line. It's going to be a variance. That's going to be your inventory transactional data that we entered. But here you can see what has been made. You can actually select a document number or select a line and then come back up here, as Corey would say, have some fun and click this document number and see who did what as far as who made the transaction. You can see what was pulled in and out, by what unit of measure, and so forth. So that's a good place to go and see what's happened to that item over time.
On that as well, the unit of measure changes if they don't.
Oh, yeah. So we have this drop down too. So we have it set by bottle. And if you come down here, you're really just going to use bottle and case, but you can come back and you can adjust it so it shows case quantity as well, if you prefer.
You also notice at the bottom where it shows the total stock and on hand, and then there's an allocated blue hyperlink. If you have orders allocate or quantity allocated to open orders or invoices in the system right now, then you can click on that blue hyperlink and it's going to pull up a window that shows everything that currently is allocated to that item. So that might be useful as your customer service team is reviewing what currently is tying up this stock, if they need to adjust quantities for back orders or something like that. If you can go ahead and click on that allocated hyperlink, it'll just pull up this other window that will show the quantity allocated in bottles to each of those orders or invoices. And those are open, unposted documents.
But if you didn't click, wouldn't it show where the allocated is?
It'll show the total.
Yeah, just show the total.
Absolutely. But if you needed to drill back into those documents and see exactly, what customer's tying this up, if you need the last bit of stock or something like that.
And if there was information here, you could do the same with this document number and drill back and see what document number or what's on what document number. All right, so we do have some smart lists. I'll briefly go over. There's a couple of reports that are going to be very similar to this smart list. So they are inventory adjustments by item class and reason code, and then it's flipped. Variance by item class and reason code. You just click that here, and then you can come in here and see all your adjustments, your item numbers, how much was transferred in or out, and what the date was. Any questions about this stuff before I move on to a couple of our reports?
Just real quick, if
Yeah.
a physical inventory adjustment, does it give you physical inventory, or is it just another adjustment like a variance adjustment?
It'd just be a variance.
It's not
Yeah.
a problem, because I can tell by the date.
I mean, we could do another reason code if you
No, I
wanted
can
to.
tell by the date, it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't imagine you're that happy with how the variance, right now it's automatic.
Right.
As soon as column B compares to on hand, and John flips a switch, your variance has been done, not one at a time, keying in, but that whole column gets, the variance is done, in the blink of an eye.
Right,
On the entire physical inventory.
right.
Oh, physical
Well, I saw-
inventory, when you do a physical count, let's be clear.
Okay.
You'll have an inventory count process and everything that is counted and you have variances for, it will make one big entry. You aren't keying
Right.
in what Matt did on a full physical count. Absolutely
No.
not.
We have
On,
workbooks for that.
if you're doing like quick one-off checks, of
Yeah.
course you're gonna
Yeah,
do a
yeah.
one-off.
Yeah.
But if you're doing a full physical count, no. You're gonna have a whole process where you're different process, and we'll get into that after. We typically do that after go live because you're not going to do a count right at go live. So we focus on the issues you do.
Okay.
But no.
Yeah, that would
No,
take
you
forever.
would not key in every
I had a little
item.
leap of faith on that one.
Yeah,
I
good
knew there
lord.
was a
I hope I
process.
would do that right better. That would be disappointing.
All right, so next we have a couple of reports that's going to be located in your reports folder under inventory management. We have a couple, so, well, more than a couple, but we have inventory adjustments report by class and reason. So when we run this report, I already have an example. No, this is not the example. This is a bin location. I apologize. So I'm just going to select a range of values. And you want to select either you want it detailed or condensed. So if you want to see the details or just a brief summary. And then I'm going to I'm going to leave this bucket alone, and we're going to see all of them. But you can break it out to see one or the other. So this is broken down by your item class. So every spirit, we have your breakage, and these are set by reason codes too. So your breakage here, no reason codes, and this is all test data. But then we have your unsaleable as well. Now back to your wine, and then we have another report that is very similar to that. It's kind of flipped. This is by reason code and then class.
No, it doesn't show gallonage.
No, do you need it to?
No,
Why?
this will
Why?
be,
But this
we'll
is
use
not
this
part of
as
my-
part of your state reporting to tie it out, but this is not one of your state reports.
Okay,
Yep, we'll have a separate.
state reports.
Now the breakage should match the state. Should match the breakage on the state reports though.
But we
on
only
these
report in
reports.
gallonage,
But you'll have
so
a
we just-
report.
You'll have a separate
Yeah,
report
yeah.
for all that.
Okay.
So this will be, so that's a good point, Paula, because you will be able to use this to kind of tie against it and see more detail.
Yeah.
And so we'll revisit this when we discuss state reports. But this specific report is not built to have gallonage in it.
Okay,
Yep. We won't forget about you, don't worry.
thank you.
Yeah.
So this one will just break it down by reason code and then your class, or just another way to look at it.
Can you tell us what keeps breaking these cases?
We can put that on there.
And that's the reason for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, not if they didn't tell you
Right.
who's breaking
Well,
it. The
yeah,
person
yeah, yeah.
entering it
Entering
probably
it,
isn't
yeah.
the person breaking it. So
Sure.
That's all we
Sure.
can tell you.
Then we have all sorts of bin reports that are located in the same folder, in your reports folder under inventory management. We have a ton of bin location reports. I'm just going to show you one for an example. This is bin location by warehouse 1. It just shows you your item numbers, gives you your item description, and some other general information, and then it shows you where you store your items. And then it gives you some quantity information. We have quantity on hand, and we also have quantity on order over here to the right. So you can see that any that are coming in.
And this is one you can do a find on. So if you're looking for a specific item, you could do a find and jump to that item on the report. If you don't feel like reading 106 pages.
Then we have a couple of reports, or forms, excuse me, for the warehouse. So under your reports, under warehouse, we have two. So we have an item bin inquiry and item bin inquiry change. So the only difference about, I'm going to pull this one up, and the only difference about the two is the button, the submit button to make the changes. So if you want someone to have access to one and not the other, we can do that. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to decide, hey, do I want to search my item by description or item number? This actually be a good example to show you what you're going to do when you enter a new item as well. I'm not sure if that's going to work. So it's a good example to show you got to double click in here in order to type ahead. Otherwise it won't pick up that information. Uh-oh, I broke it.
Did you clear it to maybe refresh the deck?
Let's try that.
Since you just entered that guy.
Mm-hmm. So I cleared and refreshed. All right, so here we go. Pulls back the item description. You have your unit of measure. We also have your quantities here. So we have your quantities on hand in cases and in bottles. You see allocated as well. And then it'll take that on hand minus your allocated and give you your available. It'll show you your on order and your back orders. Currently, I have this item to be in the pallet room, or the, yeah,
Yeah, well, that wouldn't be right, but that's.
yeah, I know. I just picked one. But if you do want to change it, you come over here to your drop down, find your item here, or your bin location here, excuse me. So I'll select that, tab off of it, and you can do the same throughout the rest. If you want at the same time, you can change your UPC, your vintage, your pick description, and your shelf life if you ever want to keep up with that.
And just a reminder on that pick description, it can be different than your regular description. It will always default to your regular description, but your pick description is if something would be more helpful for pickers in the warehouse to see it listed different than your sales force. It shows on all pick reports. It shows on all warehouse reporting.
And the real difference, like I said, is that button. So if you just want somebody in the warehouse to be able to maintenance that without being inside of Infusion, that's a good advantage of having that. So you can have them come in here and have them type in all this stuff, and they can see these locations without being able to change them. Or, like I said, be in Infusion. So you just hit the submit button. Say it's successful. Now we'll just go back in and I'll show you how it worked. And now we can see that our current bin is the one I just changed it to. We have any questions about this form or anything?
Also, as a note, your new item form, if you'll remember, your new item form does not have the ability to set up your bins because you wouldn't know the bin yet, usually when you are setting up the new item. So this is where you can come and quickly set up those bins for a new one.
And this is pretty much all I have on this, unless I think I left anything out or anybody have any questions about anything.
And this was in warehouse, you said?
Yep, in the warehouse folder, yes.
Did you just peek at some of those other reports in that inventory management folder? We go to that one.
The
Yeah.
bin location ones?
Yeah.
I did these here.
You
Oh.
did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
All right.
There's a lot of reports there.
Yeah.
You might not use half of those reports, and that's okay. They're just sorted in different ways. A lot of them are the same thing.
Yeah.
But please play with them and let us know if there's anything you don't see that you would like.
It's important for you guys, Jerry, and,
All right. Well, thanks, guys.
You designed them knowing they weren't gonna use half of them.
They're just carried over from other distributors. We give you the benefit of what they've requested.
no charge.
Yeah, no charge
Did
extra.
they use half of them?
Yeah, I have some that use all of them, but some that not as much, you know.